congratulations on your election, your appointment as Minister for the Environment, Minister for Gaelic Affairs. So turning to your role as Minister of the Environment, what kinds of initiatives can we expect, and what previous experiences of yours will you be drawing on to frame these initiatives?
Okay, we have a number of initiatives that the department's already been working on, and we're certainly going to be seeing these initiatives through. Everything from, of course, fracking is such an important issue that is causing a lot of concern within communities and about the potential environmental impacts. So we'll certainly be continuing to look at that issue. The MV Minor hasn't been cleaned up yet. That's an issue that we're going to have to be working with our federal counterparts to move forward on. We have other departments. The Protected Lands Initiative has a plan in place that they're executing on. We're going to continue working on that. Our Waterways Group waste management reduction plans and initiatives and targets that we're working on. So all of these things are already in place that we're going to continue working on. I'm going to need to take a little bit more time to familiarize myself with all the details to set up, where we may focus or redirect any priorities. But as of now, it's moving forward. And I met with a number of people last week when I was in Halifax, and they're doing a lot of great work up there, and I'm really proud of them.
Okay, super. The aims of business are often at odds with the environment, and as someone with a background in business, can you give us assurances that you, as Minister of the Environment, will prioritize the environment over corporate interests?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a loaded question. I don't think we need to put any interest ahead of any other interests. I think what's important is finding the right balance. It's about saying, are we treating our areas, whether they be environmental or economic interests, are we treating them appropriately? So, for example, are we being too restrictive in terms of simple paperwork, right, which doesn't actually necessarily do anything to directly benefit the environment concerns, but it does have a negative effect on our corporate interests and our economic interests. What I think we need to focus on is emphasizing what we do for the environment. We do things that actually contribute to helping the environment and or protecting it. And that's the piece. So, to say just outright, the environment, yes, the environment itself, but are there things within the organization, the department, that we can do to help continue to protect and prioritize and do good things for the environment, while at the same time, recognizing that our economy is important as well, and our commercial interests, whether they be corporate or small business interests, also have to be recognized to come into play as well.
All right, so to be more specific, the Gulf of St. Lawrence is a precious breeding ecosystem with counterclockwise currents that only flush into the Atlantic once a year. Because of these currents, any oil spill would be catastrophic. So given that the Gulf has the largest lobster production in the world, the highest concentration of krill in the northwestern Atlantic, and is home to over 2,000 marine species, including endangered blue whale, what will your government do to protect our sustainable inshore fishery, the renewable tourism industries, our stunning coastlines, our historic communities, and our unique culture?
Well, right now, the work that would or could be done, to my knowledge, right now there are no proposals for any kind of drilling in that area. So it's in terms of that, just to clarify, there is no action right now being taken in that area. When and if proposals were to come forward, that is an area, that the waterways off the coast there, that are actually managed not by my department. They're managed by a joint board with the federal and the provincial governments, and they actually perform the environmental assessments and so on as well in that space. So it falls outside of my mandate and my department's mandate to actually control and work in that area. Would we have input? I'll have to find out more about the terms of reference with that board itself. I've only been on the job for less than a week myself.
I can totally respect that. All right. Historically, the Department of Environment has had a less than exemplar record with regard to public consultation, taking on the we know best approach to final recommendations. How will you ensure that Nova Scotia voices will be heard in the public consultation process on environmental initiatives and reflected in final recommendations that address the needs and concerns of people who live in and are affected by these initiatives?
I don't want to starting off there saying that the Department of Environment, I think the last 4 years, the entire government has operated and had a less than stellar record for public consultation. I speak from experience in another, trying to work with another department. You know, if you followed the campaign, if you followed the position of our leader and the party that's formed government throughout the campaign, we have an immense amount of commitment to public consultation, and we mean legitimate consultation. I think in terms of your reference to have to take a look at specific issues to see where the consultations have failed in this department, but certainly I'm aware from the other side the importance of having a meaningful input through the process, and so I'm certainly sensitive to it. What exactly would I do? I'd have to know the exact details of the issues and the challenges that this department has had to be able to look at how we're going to address those specific ones. But certainly, as an as the minister, I am aware, as an individual, and as the minister, I'm aware of those types of challenges and what it means to actually be heard. Right? It's one thing to have a public meeting; it's another to actually be heard at those meetings, and I'm certainly sensitive to that.
Sounds good. So, the Parks and Protected Areas strategy was moving towards approval by the NDP government. What will the Liberal government be doing with the current legislative requirements to put this in place?
Well, the Parks Recreation is already moving forward. I think we've the goals at that time. It was actually approved back in 2007. The original plan that was approved unanimously in the House. So I don't see any issues continuing to move forward on this particular initiative. I believe currently we're at about 9.5 plus or minus % of lands of the goal to hit 12. The strategy that's in place right now would have us on target to actually end up protecting close to 13%. So I don't see any hurdles or roadblocks in continuing to work on the work that they're doing.
That's encouraging. Good. Okay. So as you think about your responsibilities as minister, what will you do differently to ensure that Nova Scotia is part of the solution to the problem of climate change?
I think one of the big things is continuing to work on education. I mean, an earlier question you brought up this question, and you created it, and the reason I say it's loaded is because it continues to treat commercial, economic interests and environmental interests as polar opposites, and I think that's problematic because as soon as any groups start taking the position that we are working towards opposite ends, then we're not going to get consensus. We're not going to move things forward in a productive way. We need to have dialogue. In order for that to happen, I think we need to have some education. And we need to have education in the general population so that they understand both the environmental and the commercial interests and how the two can work together. They also need to understand that the interests can work together. There's lots of economic opportunity in the, that can benefit the environment as well. Right now we're focusing on some of the things that might cause risk, but with green energy and other initiatives within the green space, a few years ago in my role as a professor at St. Yvette's, I went to a business competition, and the national winner at this competition was actually proposing a business to provide green consulting services out on the West Coast. So there's lots of an opportunity where economic development can actually be developed to help actually move forward our environmental interests. So to say, back to that earlier question about this contradiction, I think that's the kind of thing that we can do to work together, and they're not polar opposites.
What actions will your government be undertaking to help Nova Scotians adapt and manage the results of rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and relocation? For example, would your government develop a much-needed coastal management strategy for protecting and living by coastal ecosystems?
Yeah. That is actually an important issue. That's becoming more important every year that goes by, is the rising tides. One of the things, again, I mentioned earlier, is education. So we need to educate our citizens, particularly those that reside in low-lying areas, of the risks and the challenges. I believe, and I have to double check these details, but I believe there's an initiative with municipal agencies, municipal units, where they can begin working on kind of the flood response plans and strategies there. I don't have the details on that yet, but I believe there's something being done in that space. So I think it'll probably be working with our municipal units, our municipal partners, as well as our citizens in terms of information and planning and strategizing so we can address these things.
Okay, very good. Many Nova Scotians recognize the importance of protecting the health of natural soil and water in our watersheds. Will your department continue with and expand upon the important Nova Scotia water resources management strategy to protect water and aquatic ecosystems?
I'm aware of the strategy, and I spoke with some of the members in that department about the work that they were doing last week when I first came on board and took on the position. I can't make any commitments right now in terms of expanding it. I do need to familiarize myself a little bit more, but I do agree that the work they're doing is important. And they're doing a lot of great work from management of water that we consume, as well as our waterways and our natural environments. And it's interesting, I think the department is fantastic because these initiatives really complement his earlier question about the parks and protected lands. When they strategize and target their protected lands, they do look for opportunities where they can protect areas that may have watersheds for municipal units, or they may have other ecologically sensitive water spaces. So I think it's important to recognize that the department is already working together in the different divisions on different strategies that actually complement each other and can help continue to move that waterways protection forward.
In view of the potential for environmental damage from shale gas fracturing and its resultant negative impacts on health, will the Liberal government retain and extend the moratorium? Are there plans to produce environmental and health baseline studies tailored to our particular demographic and health profiles?
Yeah, right now, you're right. There is a moratorium in place, and there are no plans to modify that moratorium, to remove the moratorium. We certainly are committed to obtaining independent assessment of the impacts of fracking. I believe in August, late August, early September, it probably got lost a little bit with the election, run up to the election, but the previous government and so our department did identify an independent consultant to begin looking into this. I have to get briefed on what the status of that particular initiative is, but the goal is to keep it arm's length from government as well as corporate interests. We want to have a truly independent assessment. I think there's a lot of back to the point of polar positions on what the impacts and value of the fracking industry are. We really are committed to getting an independent assessment on that because we need to have the information and try to make evidence-based decisions.
The sport of toxic and hazardous chemicals by rail is increasing rapidly in Nova Scotia. The town of Antigonish is expecting increased rail transport on a line that travels along the Antigonish Harbour and passes through the town directly below the hospital. How will the Department of the Environment move forward to protect communities and the environment from the serious effects and potential accidents involving the transport of dangerous goods?
I think in terms of if you're talking about when an incident occurs, how do we respond? We have protocol in place to respond in those instances, and the staff in the department, in conjunction with other agencies, in terms of actually the cleanup of the contaminated sites and dealing with those responses. If you're talking about in terms of the regulation of the transport of the materials, again, it becomes a complicated issue because it's a type of issue that involves the integration of and negotiation and working with things like the transportation department, which actually would regulate the railway lines themselves and so on. So it becomes a very complex issue to try to just have a specific response right now.
That's fair enough. That leads into this. So transportation, energy, health, and environmental issues are all closely linked. However, minimal interdepartment communication ensures that the department's research and policies remain siloed. First, do you agree with that? And if yes, how do you plan to address this through your own department? What steps will the Liberal government take to promote a whole-of-government approach to healthy public policy?
I think that's an interesting point because I think you're right. In some instances, departments are operating in silos, yet the work that they do does affect and impact others. I think if you look at the team that is formed government right now, we have great working relationships. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to continue, our dialogue, certainly at the ministerial level and around the caucus table. So we know what's going on within each of the departments, and if we see challenges and issues there, we have the opportunity to address them there. And as the opportunity comes up for further interactions at the departmental level, at the staff level,
What will your government do to rectify the deplorable pollution at Boat Harbor next to Pictou Landing First Nation?
That is an issue that I'm aware of. I became aware of it during the election campaign, despite not falling in my immediate riding. I'm certainly have contact with people in the area that and there are concerns about what's going on right there. I need to ramp up on the file, both on the departmental information that we have on that, as well as recent information being brought forward to the department from other independent or community interests, before saying exactly what can be done. Again, Boat Harbor itself is a very, very complex issue from what I've already ramped up on and become educated and informed about. It's an issue that goes back before I was born, so again, less than a week on the job. That's not something that I'm going to have a solution for right out of the gate, but it's certainly on the radar.
And here, Randy. So what do you see as the top 3 priorities Antigonish Town and County, communities of Antigonish Town and County, should plan for in the next 3 to 5 years to allow us to be a more resilient, environmentally sustainable community?
Yeah. Well, I think Antigonish Town and County already do some good things, and I think in some ways continuing to do what they're doing. I think in particular here in Antigonish and across the province, from a waste reduction perspective, I believe we as a province are leading the way nationally in terms of limiting the amount of waste we produce. It's probably 40% less waste being produced in Nova Scotia on average per person relative to the rest of the country. That's pretty significant. So we're doing some really great things already in our municipalities. As I mentioned, the question came up about the waterways, and as I mentioned, there are some initiatives there around the waterways and identifying some response plans that municipalities can work with the department on, and we'll work with the municipalities. In terms of actually identifying specifically for the municipalities, I think it's important that we don't hear what I have to say as kind of dictating to the municipalities, because we certainly want to work with municipalities in whether it's continuing the waste reduction, their water and sewer treatment initiatives and so on that they want to work on. Again, rising tides or other environmental concerns that they may have. It's about working with and collaborating with them, and whatever those top priorities end up being as they go through, it's known that they have a partner to work with them in identifying and prioritizing those initiatives. But like I said, I do think we have a pretty good record in Antigonish, and I think it's something that they've done really well in their waste management. In fact, people from away that come here and the way that we have to sort our garbage and so on, it's not overly burdensome, and yet it has a really positive impact. And I mean, you think back to when we were kids and the way that everything just went out. I think we have made some good strides, and we need to continue to do that.